Today we talk with a gentleman who dubbed himself the original front teeth, gold teeth Don Gorgon, brush teeth with toothpaste, he says.
They didn't call him the Don Gorgon for nothing. Ninjaman didn't just step into dancehall, he kicked down the door with a mic in one hand and mayhem in the other. From clashing on stage like it was war to clashing with the law off stage, Ninjaman built a name that stirred fear, respect, and controversy in equal measure. But behind the wild performances and street-tough image was a story that took darker turns than any dancehall beat could cover. In this video, we're breaking down the rise and fall of one of Jamaica's most notorious artists, Ninjaman, the most feared man in dancehall. The icon's beginnings. Before he was the Don Gorgon, the man with the gold teeth and a mic that could slice through steel, Desmond John Ballantyne was just a scrappy kid from Anato Bay. Born on January 24, 1966, Ninjaman didn't exactly ease into fame. He fought, shouted, and swaggered his way there. And let's be real, he didn't come to the dancehall scene to play nice. At age 12, Ballantyne moved to Kingston, a city that eats the weak for breakfast and grooms the bold for battle. That move set the stage for what would become one of the most outrageous, controversial, and downright legendary careers in Jamaican music. He didn't start as Ninjaman. Nope, his first handle was Double Ugly. And yeah, the name raised eyebrows even in a place where stage names get wild. Still, the kid had guts. He jumped into the sound system scene with black culture at just 14, grabbing the mic and never letting go. You think Gen Z has confidence? Try telling a Kingston crowd you're Double Ugly and still get them to pull up your set. A couple of years later, he upgraded both his skills and his surroundings by joining the Kilimanjaro sound system in 1980. That move was like getting into the Ivy League of sound clash culture. Here, he rubbed shoulders with icons like Supercat and Early B. So, he was not just learning from the best, but holding his own right beside them. Somewhere in that musical madness, Double Ugly gave way to Ugly Man. Not exactly glamorous, but hey, it stuck. For a while. Eventually, Desmond Ballantyne transformed yet again. This time into the name that would rattle speakers and headlines alike, Ninjaman. Now he had a name that matched his energy. Sharp, dangerous, and a little unpredictable. You didn't just hear a Ninjaman performance, you survived it. His style was like a lyrical grenade. You might not agree with everything he said, but you couldn't ignore him. He wasn't just loud for the sake of it either. Ninjaman had range. One night, he'd be talking gun talk that'd make a gangster blush. And the next, he'd be dropping social commentary with more bite than a yard dog. That split identity, part villain, part preacher, kept fans on their toes. And whether you loved him or hated him, you watched. But here's the part that nobody wants to be the headline. The higher the rise, the harder the crash. And Ninjaman, he didn't just fall, he imploded. Music enters the picture. By the late 80s, dancehall had its share of big personalities. But nobody, and I mean nobody, hit the scene like Ninjaman. Loud, unpredictable, and always ready to clash, he wasn't just performing music, he was waging lyrical war. And for a while, it worked. In 1987, things really took off with the release of his first major hit, Protection, a duet with Courtney Melody. That track was a banger and a warning shot. Ninjaman had arrived, and he was coming for the crown. Over the next few years, he teamed up with some of the biggest producers in reggae and dancehall. King Jammy, Bobby Digital, Philip Faddis Burrell, Henry Junjo Laws, and Steely and Clevie, just to name a few. Basically, if your name carried weight in a Jamaican studio, you probably worked with Ninja at some point. And here's the thing, the man didn't even write down his lyrics. Word on the street is he came up with everything off the dome. Straight freestyle, no pen, no pad, just vibes, aggression, and one of the sharpest tongues in the game. Between 1989 and 92, Ninjaman dropped a string of heavy hitters like Border Clash, Murder Dem, Permit to Bury, and Above the Law. Each track piled onto his growing image as a trigger-happy lyrical outlaw. If you crossed him, expect a diss track before sunset. He went toe-to-toe with heavyweights like Supercat, Shabba Ranks, and Florgon, and he wasn't backing down for anyone. But with all that hype came heat. By 93, the backlash began. People started questioning his obsession with violence and gun culture in his lyrics. Critics were not just raising eyebrows, they were slamming doors. Suddenly, the bookings dried up, radio airplay got tight, and the once invincible Ninjaman started to feel the effects of his badman persona backfiring. Behind the scenes, things weren't looking good either. Court dates started stacking up, and his struggles with addiction were no longer rumors. They were fact. In July '96, he was arrested on firearm charges, right before he was set to perform at Reggae Sunsplash. Bail was granted, but that didn't last long. Turns out, he'd skipped bail back in '93 for another shooting case. The result? He missed the stage that year and added another mark to his rap sheet. Then came 1997, which was a turning point. After getting caught with crack cocaine during a routine stop, the judge gave him a choice: jail time or rehab. Ninjaman chose help, but he didn't just go to rehab. He went full transformation mode. He rebranded himself as Brother Desmond and started performing gospel reggae. Yes, you read that right. The same man who once screamed "murder dem" into microphones was now singing about salvation and redemption. It was a dramatic pivot, but it wasn't just for show. He was trying to save himself. In '99, he hit another unexpected milestone, this time on the big screen. He landed a role in Third World Cop, a gritty Jamaican action flick that went on to become the island's highest-grossing film. He showed up in other movies too, including Rude Boy, The Jamaican Don, and Gangsta's Paradise. It wasn't Hollywood, but it showed that Ninjaman had more layers than people gave him credit for. But no matter how many performances or film credits he stacked, he was always viewed as the wild card of dancehall. Unpredictable, unfiltered, unapologetic. Industry insiders said he was just too much to manage, too hot to handle. He never locked down an international record deal, unlike rivals like Shabba Ranks, who got scooped up by Epic Records in '90. One executive admitted they tried to sign Ninja, but the legal chaos and his unpredictable nature made it impossible. Wayne Chen, a businessman who once booked him, described him as cantankerous and unreliable, which, in business terms, is like setting your resume on fire. Still, the talent was undeniable. On stage, he could silence a crowd without saying a word. Just one look, and the audience was locked in. And that's the bittersweet part. Ninjaman had everything it took to go global: charisma, originality, a stage presence that could wake the dead. But self-destruction followed him like a shadow. Despite all the clashes he won, especially at Sting, where he dominated year after year between 1989 and '95, his offstage behavior always kept him a step away from that next level of stardom. Vibes, cartel, and church. You can't talk about the most intense beefs in dancehall without mentioning that moment. Vibes, cartel throwing hands on stage with Ninjaman. It was like watching two volcanoes collide, and they didn't disappoint. But if you followed the career of Ninjaman, you know that was just one chapter in a saga that's been part lyrical warfare, part spiritual reckoning, and part street-level chaos. Before that infamous clash, Ninjaman had already been knee-deep in dancehall rivalries. His ongoing feuds with Supercat and Florgon kept the streets buzzing, but it was his bad blood with Shabba Ranks that really lit things up. The two went at it in a series of musical face-offs that practically defined the Sound Clash era. You weren't just listening to their battles, you were witnessing a lyrical brawl. Then came the fireworks with Vibes Cartel, the self-proclaimed world boss. After the dust settled, Ninjaman made it clear that if he really wanted to retaliate, it wouldn't be with words. He said, point blank, he could take it to war, but instead of violence, he chose to keep it on the mic. Over the years, the two squashed their feud, with Cartel even giving Ninja his flowers and publicly recognizing his legacy. But by the early '90s, Ninjaman's lyrics, often loaded with gun talk and street menace, started making people uneasy. Around '93, the calls for cleaner content got louder, and promoters started backing away. It wasn't just about the music anymore. Authorities and organizers didn't want the smoke that came with booking someone whose songs seemed to toe the line between art and reality. If Ninjaman was on the flyer, there was a real chance the sound system might get shut down before the first rhythm dropped. By '97, he was done with that life, or at least trying to be. He publicly admitted to battling crack cocaine addiction and said in his own words that he couldn't talk about the damage it causes without experiencing it firsthand. His honesty was raw, and it hit home for a lot of people who were watching him unravel. So he made a change. He traded in the name Ninjaman for Brother Desmond, started hitting the gym, and turned his mic toward gospel reggae. The same man known for Murder Dem and Permit to Bury was now singing about salvation. In Jamaica, where many grow up with Christian roots, this pivot wasn't unheard of, but it still caught people off guard. This was the original Don Gorgon saying he found God, and people listened. Like Lady Saw would later do, Ninjaman walked away from the wildness and toward the pulpit. For a time, fans welcomed him back with open arms. The street preacher vibe was real, and it looked like he was finally finding peace. Then came the movies. In '99, Ninjaman landed a major role in Third World Cop, a Jamaican action film that blew up locally. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch for Ninja's performance alone. The movie became the highest-grossing Jamaican film of its time. He wasn't just playing himself either. He showed real acting chops. That role led to parts in Rude Boy, The Jamaican Don, 2003, and Gangsta's Paradise, 2004. Turns out, he was just as intense on camera as he was on stage. By 2009, he had found a new audience online. Ninjaman was active on Instagram, dropping videos with his signature line, "Send out the hearts." Fans ate it up, reposting his content all over YouTube. It felt like the original dancehall badman was mellowing out and becoming more reflective. But trouble, once again, wasn't far behind. Away from the mic. In a world where some artists are proud pet parents or boast a sneaker collection, Ninjaman took legacy to a whole other level. Fathering 33 children with 32 different women. Yes, you read that right. While most were keeping track of his lyrical clashes and courtroom battles, the Don Gorgon was out here building a family tree that could fill a concert hall. Desmond Ballantyne, better known to fans and foes alike as Ninjaman, wasn't just a force in dancehall. He was a walking contradiction. Fearsome on the mic, revered in clashes, feared in the streets, and somehow still a prolific patriarch in his personal life. During his 2017 sentencing hearing in Jamaica's Supreme Court, character witness Delroy McDowell casually dropped the bomb that Ninjaman had just over 30 children. Then, in 2022, the final number was confirmed. 33 children with 32 different mothers. His longtime friend and dancehall artist Stacey Scarlett Bryan, confirmed the math, and the internet pretty much collapsed into collective shock. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the numbers. In Jamaica, a man with many children can be seen as a symbol of virility, power, or simply poor judgment, depending on who's telling the story. For Ninjaman, though, this sprawling network of children wasn't some secret shame. It was part of the mythos. Just like his gold teeth and wild stage antics, it became another layer of the character he created. A street king, a lyrical warrior, and a man who never said no to love or lust. Still, the logistics boggle the mind. 33 kids? That's birthday parties every other week, and a Father's Day that probably requires a spreadsheet. But this wasn't about ordinary parenting. It was about identity, legacy, and roots. In Jamaican culture, large families are often born from complex social, economic, and emotional dynamics. For many artists who rise from poverty, fatherhood can become both a badge of honor and a heavy responsibility. And for someone like Ninjaman, who straddled the line between fame and infamy, it became part of the narrative that made him larger than life. But make no mistake, behind the bravado is a serious conversation about family, stability, and accountability. Dancehall, for all its bluster, has long been a mirror reflecting the socio-political realities of Jamaica's working-class communities. When men like Ninjaman become icons, their personal choices carry cultural weight. The fact that his parental record came out during his trial only added fuel to the debate. Was he a father figure or just a figure who fathered? Stacey, one of the few people close to Ninjaman who publicly spoke about his children, painted a more human picture. According to her, he tried to be involved in his children's lives, even as his own life spiraled into legal chaos. She described him as someone who loved his children, though the scale of that love might have been hard to manage. Parenting that many kids isn't just a full-time job. It's a full-time logistics operation, a marathon of emotional bandwidth, and a never-ending financial commitment. And while Ninjaman might have been king of the stage, being king of that many households is another story. There's also the question of what kind of legacy this creates for the children themselves. Growing up in the shadow of a man like Ninjaman, part legend, part cautionary tale, comes with its own complexities. Some may carry his charisma, his musical talent, or his defiance. Others may struggle with his absence, his reputation, or the sheer scale of sharing a father with so many others. In the end, the tale of Ninjaman's 33 children isn't just tabloid fodder. It's another piece of the wild, complicated puzzle that was his life. It speaks to the contradiction of a man who could silence a crowd with a single lyric, but couldn't seem to quiet the chaos in his personal world. It reveals how fame, masculinity, and fatherhood collide in the world of dancehall, often with unpredictable results. So, whether you see him as a legend, a cautionary tale, or a man who simply couldn't resist the ladies, one thing's for sure, Ninjaman left a mark. Not just on dancehall, not just on Jamaica, but on an entire generation of children who call him Dad. Rise and fall. Ninjaman didn't enter the dancehall scene quietly. He roared into it like a storm, spitting lyrics like bullets and dressing like a man who knew the spotlight couldn't handle his shine. With his signature gold teeth, razor-sharp wit, and a reputation that walked into the room before he did, Ninjaman didn't just perform on stage, he claimed it. He was spectacle and substance, bravado wrapped in bass lines. And when he touched the mic, everyone knew something wild was about to happen. But behind the bluster, behind the booming rhythms and rowdy clashes, was a story riddled with reinvention, rage, and ruin. Dancehall wasn't just a stage for him, it was a battlefield, a sanctuary, a confessional booth, and sometimes a mirror reflecting the chaos within. Now fully loaded with charisma and confidence, Ninjaman began releasing singles in the 1980s. But what really set him apart was his presence in the dancehall arena. Ninjaman was built for lyrical combat. His clashes with other artists were legendary. He could tear down opponents with his biting rhymes and gritty realism. He wasn't just participating, he was setting the bar, then smashing it to pieces, and daring others to keep up. It wasn't just about rhymes, it was war with words. That earned him nicknames like Don Gorgon and Gold Teeth Front Teeth Don, monikers that became as iconic as his music. Every nickname added to his mythology, and every performance reinforced his dominance. But as the 90s rolled in, his reputation offstage began to overshadow his lyrical dominance. While his catalog grew with bangers that dominated dancehall airwaves, so did the headlines, and not the good kind. Rumors swirled about his ties to violence, his erratic behavior, and alleged connections to street life. Ninjaman became a symbol of the razor-thin line between the glory of dancehall and the grit of the streets. His image, once larger than life, now seemed to merge with the dangerous legends he once rhymed about. Things took a serious turn in March of 2009. Ninjaman and his son were arrested for the murder of Ricardo Johnson, who was shot and killed on Mall Road in Kingston. For Ninjaman, this wasn't some random location, it was home turf. He had long boasted about being the Don of that area, and in Jamaican street culture, claiming a title like that isn't just for lyrical flair. It comes with weight, power, and risk. This wasn't just another legal drama involving a celebrity. This was a murder charge with layers, street politics, reputation, fear. And for Ninjaman, a man already fighting off the perception that he was more gangster than artist, this charge was a deadly echo of the persona he had built. Trial and post-trial life. The saga of Desmond John Ballantyne, better known as Ninjaman, plays like a Shakespearean tragedy wrapped in sound clash, smoke, and Kingston street dust. Once hailed as the gold-toothed gladiator of dancehall, the Don Gorgon now sits behind bars, entangled in a murder conviction and a long-awaited appeal that may or may not rewrite his fate. But how did one of Jamaica's most feared and fascinating musical figures go from running the mic to running out of legal options? It began in 2009 when Ninjaman, alongside his son, was arrested and charged for the murder of Ricardo Johnson on Mall Road, a place Ninjaman had long claimed as his turf. This wasn't just another headline, it struck deep. Mall Road wasn't just the crime scene, it was home turf for the artist, a neighborhood he often referenced and symbolically ruled. In Jamaica's street culture, to call yourself Don of an area isn't just metaphor, it's a declaration, and declarations come with consequences. For years, the case crawled through the court system. There were over 17 scheduled trial dates, but delays and no-shows haunted the proceedings. In March 2012, Ninjaman was granted bail to the tune of 2 million Jamaican dollars. He remained free for several years, during which time the court system tried, and repeatedly failed, to seat a full jury. The issue? Many were reportedly too intimidated to sit in judgment over a national icon with a reputation for walking both lyrical and literal battlefields. Despite the circus of setbacks, a date finally stuck. On November 20th, 2017, Ninjaman and his co-accused were found guilty of murder. Less than a month later, on December 18th, the judge handed down a life sentence. Ninjaman, then in his early 50s, would need to serve 25 years before being eligible for parole, which means that he'd be pushing 80 before even having a shot at release. The conviction shook the dancehall community to its core. This wasn't a fall-off. It wasn't a musical fade-out. It was a complete vanishing act, an erasure from the stage he helped build. And yet, from the confines of prison, the aura of Ninjaman persists. His flamboyance, his wit, his fierce stagecraft, all of it remains etched in the DNA of the genre. Modern dancehall artists still echo his cadence, mimic his boldness, and measure their own stage presence against the original gold teeth front teat. But the story doesn't end with his sentencing. In 2024, Ninjaman launched a formal appeal on 4 key grounds. His legal team argues that the extensive delay before the trial compromised his defense. Over the years of postponed court dates, alibi witnesses became unavailable, leaving the defense without key testimony. Second, discrepancies were found in court transcripts, inconsistencies between what was said on the stand and what was documented, which could indicate procedural errors. Third, and perhaps most provocatively, the defense claims Ninjaman's celebrity status biased the jury. The prosecution allegedly leaned into his bad man image, bolstered by his past interviews and his infamous clash with security forces at the 2002 Sting concert. In a society where music, myth, and reputation often blur together, separating the man from the myth can be nearly impossible. The fourth point of appeal centers around the doctrine of common design, a legal concept that suggests shared intent among co-accused parties. In this case, the prosecution argued that even if Ninjaman didn't pull the trigger, his involvement in the sequence of events and his return to the scene made him culpable. The defense counters that this is circumstantial at best, and certainly not the smoking gun evidence needed for a conviction of this magnitude. It's not hard to see the parallels between Ninjaman's case and that of fellow dancehall giant Vib's Cartel. Both are larger-than-life figures with loyal fan bases and troubled pasts. Both cases are steeped in rumors, delays, and a lingering sense that the courtroom may not have been a level playing field. And so, we wait. As of now, Ninjaman's fate rests with the appeal courts. If procedural flaws are deemed significant, a retrial may be granted. If not, the Don Gorgon may never touch a stage again. Regardless of the outcome, one thing is certain. Ninjaman's story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a reflection of a world where the line between performance and reality is razor thin, and where the same voice that commands a crowd can be drowned out by a judge's gavel. Whether remembered as a pioneer, a pariah, or something far more complicated, Ninjaman remains unforgettable, forever etched into the legend of dancehall. A legacy despite his fall. Before the scandals, before the courtroom headlines, Ninjaman had already carved his name deep into the dancehall wall of fame. He was a cultural force, a lyrical warrior, and a fearless showman who helped define what hardcore dancehall looked and sounded like in the late 80s and early 90s. Ninjaman's contributions weren't just musical, they were philosophical. He brought theater to sound clashes, unpredictability to stage shows, and a brand of grit that resonated with the streets. Coming up under the tutelage of legends like Supercat and Early B, Ninjaman honed his style at a time when dancehall was shifting from its roots reggae foundations into something raw and more aggressive. He didn't just follow that shift, he pushed it further. His stage persona, laced with swagger and streetwise rhymes, made him a favorite in clashes, where verbal agility and crowd control are the true test of an artist's power. With each appearance, he was rewriting the rules of engagement. But Ninjaman's influence extended far beyond lyrical duels. He helped usher in an era where image, persona, and lyrical dominance worked hand in hand. From his flamboyant gold teeth to his infamous Don Gorgon title, he knew how to brand himself long before Instagram made that a requirement. And while critics often pointed to his violent lyrics, fans saw them as a reflection of the turbulent realities many Jamaicans faced. Ninjaman became a mirror, flawed, chaotic, and raw, but always authentic. Even as newer generations took the mic, his impact lingered. Artists like Bounty Killer and Vibes Cartel owe part of their artistic DNA to the groundwork Ninjaman laid, both stylistically and thematically. And while his later life was clouded by legal troubles and controversy, his mark on dancehall culture remains undeniable. He wasn't just a participant in dancehall's golden age, he was one of its architects. From clashing kings on stage to battling demons in the courtroom, Ninjaman's story reads like a Shakespearean tragedy set to a dancehall rhythm. Once hailed as the Don Gorgon of the genre, he embodied the raw, rebellious energy that made dancehall a voice for the streets. But that same fire that fueled his rise also contributed to his dramatic fall. Through hit tunes, jaw-dropping stage antics, and lyrical feuds that shaped the culture, Ninjaman made history. His clashes were legendary, his style unmatched, and his presence unshakable. Whether you loved him or feared him, one thing was clear: Ninjaman was the show. But behind the gold chains, bravado, and gritty verses was a man walking a tightrope between fame and chaos. His many brushes with the law, culminating in a murder conviction and a life sentence, cast a long shadow over his legacy. Still, to ignore his contributions would be to ignore a massive chapter of dancehall's evolution. Ninjaman gave voice to the pain, power, and pressure of ghetto youth. He turned his life into art, and then his art became a mirror to a society grappling with violence, poverty, and identity. And while his later years brought more headlines than hit songs, his influence continues to echo in the sound and swagger of today's stars. As we reflect on the rise and fall of this polarizing icon, we're left with more than just a cautionary tale. We're reminded of the razor-thin line between genius and self-destruction, between the stage and the street. Ninjaman's life is both a celebration of raw talent and a sobering look at what happens when that talent burns too hot. Love him or judge him, one thing's certain: Desmond Ballantyne, aka Ninjaman, will forever be one of dancehall's most unforgettable figures. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the legends, the legacies, and the untold stories behind the music that moves the world. Let us know in the comments, what do you think Ninjaman's true legacy is?